Hello, everybody, and welcome in to Speaking Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I'm Nick Vete. He's Ricardo Martinez-Paz, and we finally have Steelers and Eagles wins to talk about again. The Steelers and Eagles. The Eagles winning on Christmas. The Steelers winning on, I believe it was the 23rd. So both of these teams getting wins around the holiday. I hope everybody out there had a good Christmas. Ricardo, you have a good Christmas, man?
Yeah, man, I enjoyed it. Lots of food, lots of football, How about you,
Yeah,
man?
man. Spending time with family, eating some food, watching football. I mean, what more can you ask for? Interestingly enough, the NFL blew the NBA out of the water when it came to ratings for Christmas Day. I mean, no surprise there, right?
No, not really. It was crazy the numbers though that came out, but still.
Yeah, I mean, really like on Thanksgiving level, and I mean now. I don't know. I've heard conflicting things where the NFL wants to do Christmas Day games every year, and then they're saying they won't do them if it ever falls on a Tuesday or Wednesday. So, I don't know. It's always nice to have football on a holiday when you're home with your family and everybody's just acting all lazy and full on food and stuff like that. So, yeah, man. Yeah. It was cool to have it this year. I didn't watch a single NBA game. I watched maybe like 10 minutes of the Knicks game in the morning, but I've been so checked out of basketball this year. Really just have had my teeth completely sunk into the NFL and NHL.
Yeah, rightfully so. I mean, like you said, the season kind of starts Christmas Day and it's like afterward, but for NBA.
Yeah, that's what I always say is Christmas Day, and after that is when the games really start to matter for the NBA. And I don't, with the play-in tournament, I mean, I'm good until the All-Star break, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the perfect way to it's the perfect way to consume the NBA, man. I kind of know what's going on, and then all of a sudden I watch the All-Star game and I know, oh, these are the guys who are having a good season. Then I start watching the NBA a little bit more closely. I know who's having a good season. I get caught up with the standings. I can get excited about, which team's going to be the 1 seed, which teams are going to make the play-in tournament. And then I hop right into the playoffs, man. And it's just like, bam, best time to watch the NBA. Then people start playing defense again, too. It's great.
Yeah, you're right. No,
honestly, I think I need to I know obviously the NBA wouldn't hire me to market their sport with that logic, but I mean, I honestly think that's the best thing for them.
Put it on a shirt, man.
All right, man. Yeah, honestly, I should have back before the play-in tournament. I should have made shirts that said NBA season doesn't start till Christmas, but I don't know. I missed the boat on it. Now it doesn't start till the All-Star game, but whatever. It's also the same All-Stars every year, but it's all
popularity. Yeah. But
yeah, exactly. But we're not talking NBA. That's more NBA than I'm comfortable talking about on this podcast. So let's dive back into the NFL. Man, I'm gonna leave the ball in your court. Which of these games do you want to start with? Both of our teams getting wins here.
Let's start with your team, man. I think we should start there. Yours was played first too, so
explosive win for these Steelers, man. Yeah. I mean, holy crap, man. Mason Rudolph out of nowhere, man. Out of nowhere, Mason Rudolph. 290 yards, 2 touchdowns, had no turnovers. I believe he was like 17 for 27, something like that. So really kind of had the game of his career. And I think you could argue this is, outside of the other game that the Steelers kind of beat up on the Bengals, which it's funny that the only team the Steelers have really exploded offensively, I guess, has been the Bengals. This was probably their best offensive output of the season outside of that other Bengals win. And I mean, man, this was a must-win game to stay alive in the playoff hunt. Really, it felt like that. Even though I think all the NFC or all the AFC South teams lost this week, which happened to be all the teams kind of ahead of them for that last wild card spot. But, I felt like off of the losing streak that they were on, the 3-game losing streak, this was a game they had to have. And they came out and they got it. And really the leading factor of it was their offense just exploding and going for multiple touchdowns. George Pickens having a huge game, 2 touchdowns. Yeah. Mason Rudolph just slinging it around the stadium. And then Calvin Austin also punched in that 3rd touchdown. I don't know if I'm forgetting a 4th touchdown, but 3 touchdowns there. And yeah, the offense is really playing great.
That was such a shocking win. Like seriously, like the just in the manner in which they absolutely destroyed the Bengals. And you would think after the first time around when after I think it was the game after Canada got fired, right? That they first faced the Bengals.
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
so, like you would have thought maybe adjustments would be made or something, but like I just exploded, like you said. I mean, George Pickens, I had in my fantasy team, and I benched him too.
I
I
was wondering,
texted you.
I was wondering how long into this episode it was going to take you to bring up the fact you benched George Pickens in your fantasy lineup, and it was literally the 5.5 minute mark, 5 minutes 30 seconds. I was looking at the upper left of the screen. You brought that up.
Dude, I had to. I'm like, I mean, ultimately, it didn't really affect me because I still won the game, but like, still, I was like, he has not put up more than 10 points since like week 8. I'm like, where the hell has this been all season? It's like, why against the Bengals? Like, I don't know. There's so many surprises in that game. Like obviously, pleasant surprises, but Pickens, I mean, the 2 long touchdowns he had were just unreal. And then he had that sideline toe drag, toe tap sort of catch. I mean, it was like, man, his skill set was on full display. His speed, his catch radius, is like it was just like everything, man. Like, and Mason Rudolph, man, jeez, like this was not at all what I don't think any of us were expecting. Really, like seriously, it's just like this is a guy who. You really, I mean, you caught him at one point, I believe, right? Like he wasn't on the roster at one point.
I don't know if they ever cut him, but they let him test free agency.
Oh, right, that's what it was.
I
Yeah,
think I think twice, and he definitely. I remember this offseason he came back on a 1-year deal. I think I was talking. No, last year was the last year of his rookie contract, and I
yeah,
was talking maybe the Steelers would look to trade him prior to the start of the regular season. They carried 3 quarterbacks throughout the year, and then this offseason he didn't get picked up. The Steelers signed him towards the end of it, and I mean, like, man, that's a good quarterback to have as your third quarterback, and maybe he's showing he could be a little bit more than that in the NFL, maybe a little, at the least, a backup. But he gets a ton of props, man. And I'm glad you brought up George Pickens too, because he deserves some credit here. And I don't remember which game it was this season. I was trying to look back into their schedule, who they were playing. I thought they were at home. Maybe it was the game at home against Cleveland in week 2, but that slant play on the second play from scrimmage for the Steelers offense reminded me so much of that slant touchdown he ran for just the run after catch. And that was something he talked about coming into the season, was having more yards after the catch. And man, when he caught that ball, there was one defender that was coming. I don't know which safety it was that was coming down trying to make a tackle, and they tried to arm tackle him. He broke through it, and right as soon as he broke through that arm tackle, I knew, all right, he's gone, because he's got that speed, man. He can when he can break through an arm tackle like that and get into open space, man, his speed becomes on full display.
yeah, dude, it was fun to watch. Obviously, definitely for you, I would imagine. But man, it was just, and you know what, just this, yeah, like I think you said this, yeah, at the start, like this might have been the most complete performance from this team this entire season. And I mean, yeah, when you needed it most, this team really rallied and figured out how to get out of the 3-game losing skid. Like I mean, credit goes to Mike Tomlin there. I mean, all the coaches. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. Come back from losing 3 straight games.
I mean, Ricardo, the adversity they had going into this game, 3-game losing streak. We were talking last week about how, like, the lack of a culture, the lack of an identity for this Mike Tomlin team in the locker room. It seemed like he was maybe letting things spiral out of control a little bit. And on top of all of that, it's like you just question. It's like, all right, like, how are they going to come back and win this game when they're also now benching their backup for their 3rd-string quarterback on top of all that other stuff? And for them to come out firing so much on all cylinders, I mean, I think you kind of saw, like, that second play from scrimmage for that offense to be able to score a touchdown like that so explosively with a guy who's been under scrutiny in George Pickens. And for Mason Rudolph, you see just the celebration, the excitement. He's got his jersey torn down over his shoulder, man. It was just like, it almost felt like just a sigh of relief for the Steelers at that point after everything they'd gone through in the 3 weeks since their last good offensive performance against the Bengals.
Yeah, that was also just a tone setter. I mean, that was just like we're here to like we're not messing around here. Like we are all locked in. Like don't take us lightly. Which
no doubt, no
and they
doubt.
were just
And I
so
mean, I think it
fired
was
up, man.
Jake Browning even said going into this game like they weren't taking the Steelers lightly, and that's all well and good. But man, like you saying it, they set the tone early in that game, and then I guess that kind of gets into what I had to say on the defense, man. I kind of gave my 3 points the Steelers defense had to do. It was contain the Bengals rushing attack, don't let a single wide receiver go off for big numbers, and win the turnover battle, force Jake Browning into some turnovers. They held the running game in check, only 59 yards, I believe, for the Bengals in this game. Mixon only had 43. Obviously forced Jake Browning into 3 interceptions. Really, really gave him fits when he was trying to throw the ball. And a big part of that was the pressure that TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and the defensive line were putting on him. I'll give T. Higgins credit. He had a big game. He exploded for like 150 yards and a touchdown. But the Steelers did a good job at forcing Browning into turnovers, controlling the Bengals rushing attack. And really, when you combine that with the Steelers offense scoring 4 touchdowns, there's no shot that the Bengals were going to win that game with that being the story right there.
Yeah, and I mean, it was complimentary football. It was just like the turnovers, setting up the offense in really good position. And like you said, the biggest thing had to have been, limiting the run game. And like you said, only 59 yards. And this is coming off a week against the Colts where they allowed, a third and fourth string running back to kind of gash them. So, that's, again, credit to the defense for all of them stepping up on the defensive front seven, however you want to put it. But, seriously, it's just a really, really good response.
That's a great point.
Yeah, so, and just unreal from them.
Yeah. And I was going to I'll talk a little bit about Joey Porter Jr. more because he's talked about this matchup coming up with DK Metcalf. But, I don't want to single anybody out in the secondary for T. Higgins having that big game. I think it was kind of a collective, and obviously they're down a lot of pieces at safety. Patrick Peterson making his first career start at safety. Eric Rowe off the practice squad with an interception at safety. Yeah. So just a crazy situation where Pittsburgh's at that safety position with everything that's going on there. But they did enough to limit the Bengals. And even though, Jake Browning did throw for a ton of yards, but forcing him into those interceptions really counteracted that. So the defense bounced back, and you had that great point about the front seven after the Colts ran all over them. So Steelers pick up a much-needed win, snapping that 3-game losing streak. And the Eagles also snapping their losing streak, winning on Christmas Day, beating the Giants. A game that we said anyway, or at least I said this. I don't know how you're going to feel about the win, closer than you probably would have wanted it. But I said anyway you slice it or dice it, they had to get back in the win column. They did that, but I'm sure you're not satisfied with the effort.
No, you just said it. The game was definitely closer than it had to be. It was 20-3 at halftime, and the offense was playing fairly well. There were still some broken plays here and there that could have easily turned into negative plays and lost the yardage, but still they ran the ball well. But it was just what really obviously.
Well, let me ask you this before you start with the rest of your points. So at halftime, you were feeling good, like, oh man, this is like outside of a few things here or there, you were like, this is the Eagles. This is exactly what I wanted the Eagles to do. Or you were feeling good about them correcting a lot of their ills from the previous couple weeks.
Yeah, for the most, I was feeling like there was, yes, I was feeling good, but there was that part of me where it was like, all right, when's it gonna kind of fall apart a bit? And that's exactly what happened in the second half. I'll just say before the end of the half, the Jalen Hurts not stepping out of bounds. I don't know what the hell that was. That was he even knew. He admitted that was his mistake. Like, he should have stepped out, and they probably would have had 8 seconds for a shot in the end zone. But either way, they still got a field goal because of the dumb penalty that the Giants committed. So, but going into they're coming out of the break, out of the second half, that kick return, Zacchaeus getting absolutely shoved into Boston Scott, that fumble. That's when I was like, oh boy, here we go.
That's brutal. When you're kind of sitting there, having that feeling in your stomach, waiting for the other shoe to drop, like you kind of alluded to, and that's the first play out of halftime.
Yeah, man, it was like, man, here we go, man. It just, but at that point, and the Giants scored 2010. All right, fine. Let's go drive down the field and score a touchdown. Let's get a good response out of it. And that's exactly what they were doing up until the pick six. And then I was like, oh my God. Well, Dallas Goddard slips. It wasn't, it was just one of those freak plays, it's not really anyone's fault necessarily, but the pick six, and then Jalen Hurts with the horse collar tackle. Well, who was it that had the pick six? It was
I think it was a Dory Jackson.
it was Dory Jackson. Yeah, the horse. He's already in the end zone. Just let him go. Like there was no need to grab him there. But then 20-18, they get the 2-point conversion, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, oh no. Like
you probably must have felt so nervous at that point.
I was just more annoyed than nervous. I was just like, seriously, this should not be a game. Like that's what I kept telling myself the entire time. And then the Eagles went to score 10 unanswered. The Giants then scored that really quick touchdown. And I mean, say what you want. It was just the turnovers. It's more of the same, really. Just the turnovers, some of the miscues. Penalties, they had 9 of them, and they're just this game, like I said, should not have been close whatsoever. And Hurts played well. The offense played well. Defensively, I thought they were doing a good job. I mean, to the point where Tommy DeVito got benched. So, I mean, that's
and I was gonna bring that up. Like the defense did, for the most part, play very well. Tyrod Taylor did kind of get them back into the game. I mean, he made some plays that continued to keep it close. But they played well enough that Tommy DeVito, his Linsanity-esque run came to an end.
Yeah, I figured that was going to end at some point. I didn't expect to be this game, but still, it's like the Eagles outgained the Giants by 170 yards. They had 28 first downs to the Giants 14, so double the first downs the Giants had.
Yeah.
So really,
they won the time of possession battle too, pretty
handily. Yeah, they ran the ball well. Like it just seemed like they clicked, and Britton Covey had a few really solid punt returns, kick returns.
I was going to bring him up. He had a big game here.
Yeah, he set him up on the first scoring drive, and then the second one that they had. So it just. Man, they can never play a full 4 quarters. That's the theme the entire season, man. I don't know how many times I'm gonna have to keep saying it, but it's just like, no, they didn't play down to the Giants level, but it's still this is one of the teams you have to put away.
Take away those 2 turnovers, and the Eagles may have won this game by 2 touchdowns at least.
Yeah, they easily should have and covered the spread. Whatever, if you put money on that, who cares? But. This was just it was dominant, up until the point, those 2 big miscues. And I don't know.
Before you move on to your next point, to also just kind of state the other side of it, the 2 miscues are big and the pick 6 hurts, but the fact that when everything is going against you to that point, for them to respond back and score a touchdown on the ensuing drive after the pick 6, I mean, they also deserve credit for that resiliency.
That's true. There have been those moments, where it kind of like what you said, what you just laid out was like when things are going against you. I mean, I think of instances like every time the Eagles have trailed, which was like 5 straight games at one point, 6 straight games, I think. And every single time, when it seemed like your backs were up against the wall and everything was going against you, they found a way to respond. And, that was kind of no different in this case, just in this situation, they weren't trailing. But still, it was the response that they needed that made it 27-18. Defense got a stop on the next drive, and then the offense got a field goal after. So, I mean, you can see those moments here and there of like, yeah, this is still a resilient team. This is still a team that's capable. They're not going to like shy away. They're be scared of the moment. They'll for the most part, most times I feel like they step up, but coming off 3-game losing streak, it kind of, for me as a fan, watching that game almost reminded me of the Seahawks and kind of blowing the lead at the end. This is where I felt like it was kind of going to, but the fact that they didn't blow this lead. They still, pulled away with it in the end. It was at least, win's a win. Say what you want about that, but at least, it almost feels like pressure came off, like some pressure at least, not all of it. There's still some question marks with this, a lot of questions with this team, but you still got the win, which is the most important result ultimately.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the thing that I kind of, said going into this game was no matter what, you need to get back in the win column. Like that was first and foremost, snap this winning streak, get a win. You have 3 very winnable games to close out the season. You've got your game against Arizona, the Jonathan Gannon, return game. You've got another game against the Giants. This is a game, just get back in the win column and then really start to hammer out and, potentially play some good football in these last 2 games against, lesser opponents in the Cardinals and the Giants a second time. So I'm not saying they righted the ship. They got the W, but now is, and we'll talk about this when they preview the Cardinals. Now is the time when they really have to put their foot on the gas and string together 2 complete games because, once you get to the playoffs, it can't keep being these games where you're letting teams get back into the game because of your miscues when you've clearly been dominating them or you've clearly been playing, up to a level that is sufficient to win a football game.
Yeah, I mean, they have to clean a lot of stuff up, but, this was their best offensive outing since the Bills game. Even then they were outgained. And I mean, literally the last 3 games, they've been outgained every single time. So again, this is also another sort of breath of fresh air. But yeah, well, we'll get into the Cardinals game, but there was a lot to unpack in that game.
Yeah, and let me just ask you this because I feel like this is something that's starting to, you're starting to see just the way things are working with just how the defense is looking better. But we talked about DeVito being forced out of the game and the defense playing better. I mean, are you buying into like this, Matt Patricia play calling and it being a formula that can work? I mean, they looked pretty solid. Again, it's they're without James Bradbury. Keely Ringo is stepping up, getting a lot of snaps. Shaq Leonard with his best game in an Eagles uniform. He led the team in tackles. So are you feeling good about where this defense is at and where they're trending?
I feel somewhat better. And I'm only going to feel better once, Darius Slay, Avonte Maddox come back. Those are going to be, big. I know Darius Slay's probably out until at least he's probably not playing this week. He hasn't practiced all week. But Avonte Maddox has been full participant. So I think, they're finally getting healthy and they've been relatively healthy the last few weeks. And some linebackers have been out like Moreau and Zach Cunningham, but they might be coming back too. So I think, I'll say I'm feeling slightly better, but definitely some different kind of coverages and situationally, I think they're getting a bit better. Instead of like third down playing man, they're playing a bit more zone, which is, working better for them. Against the Giants, it worked fairly well. But, again, it's always that debate. It's like, it's the Giants. Like, they're not exactly a juggernaut of an offense. So, I'm optimistic, cautious, but, a bit cautious about it.
I hear you, man. Is there anything else you want to talk about regarding this game before we get into stock up, stock down?
Nah, let's get into it.
All right, sounds good. We'll circle back around to the Steelers and get into stock up, stock down here. So I think the most obvious stock up, his stock was in the gutter, and now he's getting a stock up. Mason Rudolph, man. This is something I kind of saw circulating around social media, but you could make the case this is the best game a Steelers quarterback has had since Ben Roethlisberger retired. 290 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. You'd kind of have to go back and look through Kenny Pickett's game log of how he's played throughout this season and his couple games last year, but it definitely trumps anything Mitch Trubisky's ever done. Last season was the first season without Big Ben. So I think you could make the case, unless there's a game I'm forgetting, that Kenny Pickett played really well last year, which I don't think he ever kind of put up the yards to approach 300. And I think he's only had one multi-touchdown game. I mean, this is probably the
Yeah.
best game since Big Ben retired. So a stock up for Mason Rudolph.
Oh, absolutely deserves it, dude. I mean, yeah, the fact that Pickett's only had one multi-touchdown game is like it's crazy to me. But
It is.
yeah, but Rudolph stepped up in the biggest way possible. Like you could not have asked for a better game from him. So
Absolutely. And my other two stock ups, I mean, I got to give it to George Pickens. The
yeah,
off the field issues are one thing, but like the numbers and the talent don't lie that he displayed in this game. So, man, if he can just keep his head together and keep his business on the field rather than off of it, he's a phenomenal talent. And I'm really excited to see. I don't know. I imagine the Steelers, and I think that the smart move is still to go outside the organization next year for their new offensive coordinator.
yeah,
I hope they can still retain Eddie Faulkner because I think he's a great running backs coach. But I think they got to go outside the organization next year, and I'm excited to see what Pickens can do with somebody who's going to give him more of a route tree, and as he continues to kind of develop that aspect of his game. My last stock up, Jaylen Warren. I mean, Najee Harris was the better running back in this game. The reason I'm giving it to Jaylen Warren is he was in the media prior to this game because of there was the play that he didn't get into the end zone because George Pickens didn't block for him. And he said after the game, I would have blocked for George Pickens in that scenario. And then on the Calvin Austin touchdown, Jaylen Warren goes out there and pancakes a dude to allow Calvin Austin to get into the end zone. And, he gets a ton of credit for that, man. I hope he's a Steeler for a long time. I've said on this podcast, I think he is right now to Najee Harris what Austin Eckler was to Melvin Gordon at that point of Eckler's career. So I love Jaylen Warren, man. He's one of my favorite players on this team. And one other point I want to bring up from that play specifically is the fact that it was that classic Calvin Austin end around that Matt Canada was definitely punching air at, that it's resulted in a touchdown on that play. So just some funny stuff, man. I don't really want to give a stock down this week because it's been so doom and gloom the past 3 weeks. But if I guess I would give a stock down to anybody, it'd be just the rest of the quarterback room for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like the fact that Mason Rudolph's first start since 2019 when Ben Roethlisberger was hurt for that year, he has, almost 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, it's like, come on. Like even with, we'll get into, that's really all I have to say on that. We'll talk a little bit about Kenny Pickett versus Mason Rudolph going into this game against the Seahawks in a little bit, but that's all I really have to say. I mean, it's disappointing from the rest of the quarterback room there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what you'd say. Like, I mean, obviously they're probably the quarterbacks are just like, damn, like, well, Trubisky specifically is probably just like,
Trubisky's got to start thinking about, buying some winter clothes because he's going to be playing in Canada next year.
Yeah, like he's not going to be in the NFL, but he's like, damn, I just got showed up by a third string QB. But but I mean, going back to Jaylen Warren, I mean, that block was it's so satisfying to watch. It was just like he really backed it up, man. I'm like, I didn't doubt it at all. Like I knew he would do that, but just seeing it unfold was like, that was, I don't know, it just put a smile on my face.
That's such a beautiful, beautiful poetic justice of like the very next game, him being able to back up his word like that.
Yeah, I love it. That I loved every second of that. That was amazing to watch. But
absolutely. So, who do you have for stock up, stock down for the Eagles?
All right. So my first one, stock up, Keely Ringo. I didn't really mention
him, yes,
but I had to give him love. I mean, he's stepped up the last 2 weeks. This week alone, he was targeted 3 times and allowed only 2 catches for 9 yards. So these, I mean, was really good.
Man, you could leave it at that, and that would be enough to be said. But I mean, continue.
No, there's a couple more things. For one thing, he loves to get dirty. Listen, like this guy will tackle. He's a really good tackler. I love how physical he is. And considering he was a 5th round pick, I'm like, this guy's showing a lot of promise. I'm not going to go like overboard here, but it's certainly encouraging to see. And he finished the game with 5 tackles, a pass defense, and obviously that interception at the end to seal the win for the Eagles. I'm just like, this is what we like to see. I mean, it's just like I love seeing Keely Ringo, someone who, the first game he played like defensive snaps like against the Cowboys, he was penalized twice on the same play. Like
Yeah.
that's to me is just like it shows his character, the kind of response. Like I love that. Like him and Sidney Brown, like oh my god, their physicality is what I love. And he's a tall dude, physical dude. Like I like what I saw from him, what I've seen from him the last 2 weeks. So
Yeah, man. He was getting some projections around the draft as being like early second round talent. I mean, he fell to the fifth, and all of the, all the pundits out there, all the NFL draft pundits were saying, this is a very good value pick for where the Eagles got him. And, everybody was saying maybe he'd have to move to safety because he was so talented when plays would develop in front of him and he could go up and use his physicality to make tackles from the safety position. And there was never any doubt about his physicality and the fact that the Eagles could have a secondary with him and Sidney Brown in it for years to come. I mean, that's definitely going to be a physical sight. And I love to see, I've just been a fan of him since he came out from Georgia, man. And, like you said, props to him. The fact that the Eagles, let him take his time to develop, and he's been resilient early on in his career here. It's great to see him have a great couple games stepping up for the Birds.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll keep growing, developing. I'm excited for what's to come with him, but doing a good job filling in for Darius Slay. And I'm going to keep it on the defense.
And real quick, one other point.
Yeah.
It's actually great that he was able to be drafted in the 5th round, because let's say he was a early 2nd, 3rd round pick. He might not have had that time to sit and practice and develop. The brunt may have fallen on his shoulders much quicker, but the Eagles were cool, even when James Bradbury was struggling and they were turning to Bradley Roby and Avonte Maddox went down for an extended period of time. They were comfortable with letting Ringo develop because they knew he needed more time. And now he's got this opportunity to step up, even if maybe the Eagles still aren't 100% comfortable with it. But he's shown his development in a very short amount of time from that Cowboys game, like you mentioned. But I'm sorry. I'm just such a big fan of Keely Ringo that I had to get all this out. But you keep going with stock up, stock down.
No, man. I love that we both love him right now. I'm defensively, Shaq Leonard, you mentioned him before. He deserves some love too, and kind of been a rough start for him with the Eagles. But this week, this was actually his first game at the Link since signing with the Eagles, and he kept I swear it was like every other play. He was just trying to hype up the crowd, but led the team in tackles, had 2 tackles for a loss. He also had a sack, which was the only one, interestingly enough, and kind of looked like his old self. There was kind of this criticism of him, not trusting his body since he came coming off that injury last year and not really playing as much. But I think he's starting to look a bit more like his old form pre-injury. But we really needed it from him, especially with Morrow down, with Zach Cunningham down, and you were playing alongside an undrafted free agent and Ben Van Summerman, who actually did a commendable job too. So Shaq Leonard definitely deserves love there too. But I don't know if you have anything to add on that, but
I mean, real quick, the only thing I'll say is sometimes a change of scenery is good for a player. I mean, you hear that talk more in other sports like baseball, but maybe it applies here a little bit. I mean, the other thing too is I think it was second play of the game. He had that tackle for loss on Saquon Barkley, and you just saw him get up with so much energy that I don't know. I definitely felt a little juiced that he was kind of carrying that fire playing in the Link. So he had a good game for sure.
And my last one, I also said him before, but Britton Covey. I think I've put him on this list before, maybe one other time, but he's one of the best punt returners in the league. Doubt. He had the 54-yard punt literally after the Giants' first drive that set up the Eagles within 3 plays. They scored a touchdown to take the lead early. And then the other punt return that was kind of shanked by the Giants punter. He took that and did that pretty good job on that somehow on the bounce too. It just but I love the confidence he's playing with. And he had a reception too on a screen. I was I like that he's getting involved. He's getting his credit. He's getting, honestly, could be a Pro Bowler. But he's one of the best punt returners.
No doubt, man.
I don't know what the yardage was, but he's top 5 in a lot of punt returning categories. So he deserves a lot of credit. He deserves his flowers. He deserves his love. So
have the Eagles been having him return kicks this year? I mean, I know this was something that we talked about earlier, and I haven't been paying close attention to it, but I don't know if he doesn't like to do it or if he's just, not as, comfortable with it or what the case is, man. But he's no doubt one of the best punt returners in the NFL.
So I think it's more like Boston Scott, and Kenny Gainwell has gotten a few looks there as kick returner, but yeah, he's more kind of like the punt
Yeah.
returner, just exclusively that position, but he does it
Yeah.
well. So
Even just that, man, he's valuable to this team without a doubt.
yeah. And then stock down. I'm gonna see this is where I'm kind of stuck, but I'm gonna say the pass rush. I know they only got one sack, but they got a handful of pressure. It's just I don't know this this front four specifically. Josh Sweat. I mean Jalen Carter is kind of leveled off a little bit, but and Fletcher Cox as well, Brandon Graham. Like some of these, I think they've only had 3 sacks in their last 4 games, which is not good
Yeah, that's not
considering
good.
the amount of investment that they've put in, the amount of resources, players they've put in. This season, I obviously wasn't expecting 70 sacks, but when you're going on up against inferior offensive lines like the Giants, and they were the most sacked team going into this game, the fact that you only got one is, I don't know, it's not very encouraging, and I kind of wish I just want to see more. Is my point.
Yeah, I mean, it's not much of a different unit from last year. That that was a team that almost like broke the NFL single season sack record.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you're not expecting that back to back, but it's like that's been part of the secondary struggles is they're not getting as much pressure as the paychecks of that front four, should warrant.
Yeah. So hopefully, I don't know what needs to be done. I still think Nolan Smith deserves more playing time and giving Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat some like room to breathe, like some rest, because those dudes have been playing an insane amount of snaps, like at least 80% every week. That's not usually a recipe for success, at least for Philly. But
yeah, man. And I mean, the only other thing I have to say is like, they did Javon Hargrave was great at getting to the quarterback and creating pressure from the interior. So, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I mean, also Brandon Graham is still another year older. There's a lot of things that can go into it, but bottom line, they gotta just, warrant some more sacks, man. That's a huge difference from last year on this defense.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll get into that a bit more in the Cardinals and in the preview. So
we will. And speaking of previews, let's jump into the Steelers. Week 17 at the Seahawks. I guess the first thing with this point, man, Mike Tomlin going with the hot hand of Mason Rudolph. Kenny Pickett still deemed questionable according to the injury report. I mean, this was the game when he first got hurt. They were saying Kenny Pickett would be back for this game, and he was going to try and push it and be back last week. He ended up not being back in time for last week. They rolled with Rudolph. I mean, I don't know, man. I guess that's the talk. Is this the right call? But after what we saw from Mason Rudolph and me just from a fan's perspective being, energized by that, and this team still having a shot at the playoffs, like, I'm cool with rolling with the hot hand. I'm hoping Kenny Pickett, I've talked that, like, it's important to see what you have in Kenny Pickett, but any way you slice it or dice it, Kenny Pickett's going to be on this roster next year. He's going to be competing for the starting quarterback job no matter who they bring in, no matter who they draft. Like, he's going to be competing for that job. So I'm cool with them riding the hot hand of Mason Rudolph and carrying this magic as long as they can. I mean, we saw Tommy DeVito carry magic for the Giants for 3 weeks. If Mason Rudolph can carry magic for this team for 3 weeks and get him into the playoffs, I'm all for it, man. So that's what I'm kind of invested in right now. So I'm cool with the decision.
Yeah. So, I mean, if Kenny Pickett is active and let's say in theory, Mason Rudolph kind of cools off and struggles, do you think they would go back to Pickett, or do you think they just ride him the rest, like the whole game?
No, I think you got to go back to Pickett if Rudolph struggles.
Okay.
If he struggles and, like, I don't know whether it's just not picking up a first down, like at all throughout the first quarter and a half, or he throws an interception or two, a turnover, or you just need a jump start at halftime. Like, it's just not operating the same way, and you need a spark at halftime. Yeah, I'm going right back to Pickett.
Right. I mean, this is a defense that isn't exactly very good. I'm sure you're going to get into that. And so, I mean, run defense, pass defense, they're not good in either aspects. So
yeah, I mean, we could talk about it now, man. I mean, it's the same
yeah,
thing
yeah,
where it's a defense that they have some pieces that would you would be concerned about. I mean, honestly, the two that would most concern me are Jordan Brooks and Devon Witherspoon, their rookie corner, who I think is going to be a really good corner in this league.
yeah.
Both of them are questionable this week, dealing with injuries. So add that on top of the fact that this is a defense that has struggled mightily in pretty much both phases, defending the pass and run. You'd hope that you could continue to carry this offensive momentum, but that's easier said than done. I mean, we saw the last time the Steelers played the Bengals, and they really struggled offensively against the Cardinals. So, but that is the hope, and
Yeah.
it's Mason Rudolph is going to have this opportunity, and I support the decision, Tomlin going with that. And yeah, that's just kind of being the plan going in here.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I feel like this is a game, again, kind of like the Bengals, where you can kind of do a bit of both, mix in the run game. And I mean, if you're doing that effectively, play action, just get the ball to your playmakers. And you saw that, obviously, those two huge plays, the sideline catch, George Pickens. So just more of that. And, Reek Wollins, I don't know what the hell's going on with him, but he was, after such a promising rookie year,
Yeah.
he got benched against the Eagles, and I don't know. I don't know if he started last week, but I'm sure he didn't play very many snaps against the Titans either. But their secondary is also suspect. Like, it's just they're not playing well as a unit. So
yeah, man, they're bottom of the pack against the run, and the Steelers coming off the offense. Here's the thing: you have nothing to hold back at this point.
Yeah.
Anything that you were holding back to whatever degree, offensively speaking, like, this is pedal to the metal time. All right.
Yeah.
You want to get some, you have some plays that like are can't miss, that you've been, saving in your pocket. Like, this is the time to bring it out. These two games.
Yeah.
In my opinion, all the cards are on the table here. Anything that you have, you deploy it in these next two games, because honestly, the fact that the Jaguars, the Texans, and the slipping my mind, who else is in that AFC South that's ahead of them? Not the Titans. It's
Texans,
the
Jaguars, the Colts. Yeah.
Texans, Colts, Jaguars are the three teams ahead of them. One of them is going to win the South, and the other two teams are both ahead of them for that seventh wild card spot. That's what it's going to come down to. I think you have to win both of these last two games for that reason to get in. Because if you're in a tie with one of these teams, they're going to have the tiebreaker over you. So, I don't know if it gets into some funky stuff if it's a three-way tie, because the Steelers beat the Titans, and I believe both the I believe the Titans have beat all three of the. I don't know how these tiebreakers would work, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole with that right now. But what I'm ultimately saying is, I feel that you have to win these last two games to really have a shot at that wild card. The way that the tiebreakers may unfold could say otherwise, but especially with the Ravens being your next game, this game is pivotal to win. The playoffs are almost next to impossible to make at this point if you don't win this game against the Seahawks.
Yeah, definitely must win. I mean, at this point, every game is, but there's you just got to go for it. I mean, you just got to go out and win the game. Just be aggressive, and just go out and fire on all cylinders, man.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as the defense, I don't have much really that I want to dive into. I mean, they're still facing injury adversity with Fitzpatrick and Trenton Thompson both ruled out at the safety position. So again, it'll be Patrick Peterson making a start there, I guess, alongside Eric Rowe. We saw some Elijah Riley. Actually, I don't know if Elijah Riley was healthy, but he's listed as healthy for this week. I don't know if he saw any snaps at safety last week. Maybe a little bit of Darius Rush, who knows there, but I'm expecting more Eric Rowe again. And Landon Roberts ruled out. So it's going to be Miles Jack and McCall Walker and Blake Martinez at that inside linebacker position. So injury adversity there. The other kind of story, as I alluded to, was Joey Porter Jr. looking forward to this matchup against DK Metcalf. So that's just kind of something to keep your eye on. He said he's had this game circled for a little bit. So, that's pretty much all I have. I mean, outside of that, it's going to be Geno Smith at the quarterback position again. He's been kind of up and down after such a good season last year. But this Seahawks offense is kind of middle of the pack, but they're also fighting each game to make the playoffs. So, they're going to be playing some desperate football as well. And desperate football could make for some pretty entertaining football.
Yeah. Oh my. I mean, just going back to the defense. I mean, you can get pressure on Geno Smith. This offensive line isn't very good. They're also banged up. At this point, what offensive line isn't in the league, but
Yeah.
Still, you can get pressure on him. I would just be a bit weary of the tight ends. And you mentioned the inside linebacker specifically. I mean, they used a lot of 3 tight end sets. That's what they used against the run, or they used 3 tight ends running the ball. That was really effective against the Eagles. Not saying that's gonna be as effective in this game, but it's certainly something they really love to do. So the hope is, I'm sure they did all their scouting there, watching all the film on that, because that's 2 tight end, 3 tight end sets. The Seahawks love running those. So better be prepared for that.
Yeah, man, that's a great point I didn't even think about, because I mean the Steelers kind of had a break given the Colts the last 2 weeks. The Colts didn't gash them, but we can remember thinking back to Arizona and New England. They got beat up by the tight ends.
Yeah.
But Indianapolis doesn't really have a big-time tight end threat. Cincinnati, it's like they were down so much. They were just trying to sling it, and T. Higgins had a big game. But at that point with Seattle and their 3 tight end set, I know they got Will Dissly up there. Miles Jack, a little bit better in coverage, but I mean, McCall Walker is going to have to step up again. And I mean, man, he can't cover a tight end if he was a blanket, man. So that's definitely something that we're going to have to watch.
Yeah. That'll be an interesting matchup, though.
It is for sure. I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't even think about it. I mean, that's definitely going to be something to watch here.
Yeah. Hopefully they can slow that down. I mean, they have what, I mean, receiver, we know the whole thing. DK, Lockett. They're all big. So
absolutely. So I don't really have much more on this game. I mean, outside of those couple points we talked about, and man, this is just a big time game, must-win game for the Steelers here.
Yeah, no, it has to be. It's win, or your chances are ridiculously slim. Like, you have to hope for a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, right now they're hanging on by a thread. If you lose this game, your chances of making the playoffs are going to be less than 1%.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's transition over to the Eagles. The Jonathan Gannon game, man. They're taking on the Arizona Cardinals there, and the former defensive coordinator.
Oh my God! I mean, this is I just hope we beat the living hell out of them. Personally, considering how things ended last year, and kind of talking with the Cardinals when he shouldn't have been, and he should have been focused on preparing for the Super Bowl. All of that still kind of sits with me. It's in the back of my mind. And then some of his lies he told, he's whatever, it's just, I don't like him is my point. But this is a game that, man, this defense, he might be a defensive minded coach, but this defense is not very good. It's not really his fault necessarily. They just don't have very much talent. I genuinely, I looked at some of these names on the defensive side. I was like, I don't know any of these players except for
gun to my head, I would struggle to name someone outside of Budda Baker on that defense. And the Steelers played them.
Yeah, that's a valid point. I still can't even name who else is on this side. But the point being, they're not very talented. I mean, let me just be real with you. Offensively, you have all these big names. You have all this talent. There's no reason you should be struggling against this defense. I mean, sure, the Cardinals might be good against, or decent against the pass, but running the ball, defending the run, they're horrible. They're the last in the league in that category. So, and I mean, let's just run the ball, just pound the damn rock down their throat. Let's punish them. I just want to just end them. Like, seriously, I don't want any of this nonsense of what happened with the Giants game, with making it too close for comfort. Like, no, just put them away early. And just, pound the rock. Kind of reminded me of like last year when they put up a lot of points in the first half, the second quarter specifically. And then second half, they would just run the ball, run away with the game. Like, that's what you can do against this horrible Cardinals team. Like, I'm just saying there's no reason this game should be close at all. I don't give a damn about the point spread. Like, just take it to them. Seriously, it's like this defensive line's a bunch of nobodies. Linebackers a bunch of nobodies. Secondary a bunch of nobodies, except for Buda Baker. So just give it to you. I don't know. Like, seriously, there's no excuses here.
There's no excuses, man. And I mean, this is something that I think of where it's like we've talked about the Eagles need to find a way to play a complete game and really kind of jumpstart themselves before the playoffs here. Jonathan Gannon and the Eagles, or Jonathan Gannon and the Cardinals coming into Lincoln Financial Center, man, them really sticking it and putting up a big offensive number, and with the crowd behind them also shoving their defense, down the Arizona Cardinals offense's throat, man. That could be kind of the whole complete game, really sticking it to their old defensive coordinator that really kind of jumpstarts them for the end of the season and into the playoffs. I mean, you've heard people talking sometimes something that can jumpstart a team is when they beat, a team that is maybe better than them, and that kind of jumpstarts them for the rest of the season. For the Eagles, maybe something that jumpstarts them is beating their former defensive coordinator and really sticking it to them in all three phases.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. And I guess I'll talk a little bit about the defense. I mean, really the only threat. I mean, Marquise Brown just got put on IR. So that's one receiver gone. And then outside of him, like, the only real receiving threat is Trey McBride. So he's really the only one I like, at least in the air, I'd be focused on. But you stop James Conner, and I think you're fine. Like, seriously, there's no other threat outside of those two players. Kyler Murray, sure, here and there might break through for a scrambler too, but just this offensive line's also horrible.
Dude, this is the same conversation we had previewing the Steelers game, where it's like there's no world whatsoever the Steelers should have lost that game. It's the same thing for the Eagles. They're better on paper in every phase, record-wise, just a completely different class. There's no reason that the Eagles shouldn't win this game and win it significantly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you have all the talent in the world. The Cardinals don't. They're a team that's rebuilding, So, again, just take it. So just win the game, and convincingly, please. Like, don't do all this nonsense of keeping them in the game. Like, there's no reason for that. So that's all I have to say, really.
And I mean, just outside of that, you've got also, currently you're holding. Now, correct me on this if I'm wrong. I know that they're in the lead in the division, obviously, but who has the tiebreaker for the 2 seed between the Lions and the Eagles?
Now, the Lions do.
It is the Lions. So to me, that's an interesting question. Are you rooting for the Cowboys this week? If you're an Eagles fan, I am. Root for the Cowboys so that the Eagles can, if the Eagles win out and the Cowboys beat the Lions this week, the Eagles then win the division and get the 2 seed, because then the Lions would have 5 losses, Cowboys would have 5 losses, Eagles would win out with 4 and be the 2 seed.
Yeah, that's kind of the hope. I hate saying that because I never wanted to cheer for the Cowboys, but it's as things stand right now, yes, the Lions would have the 2 seed if the playoffs were to end today. So, yeah.
I think that's what you have to do. The only risk you run then is if the Cowboys win this week and then they have Washington to close out the year, and let's say they blow over Washington. If the Eagles, for some reason, lose this week or the following week, then they would all of a sudden be a wild card team.
Yep. And that's not what you want. And I mean, that's at that point, all hell breaks loose. It's like
at that point, these episodes are going to be. I mean, it's going to be a very different tone on these episodes, because if that's the scenario, Ricardo, let's be honest. If that's the scenario where the Eagles lose one of these 2 games and the Cowboys close out on a 2-game win streak and get the division title, and the Eagles have to travel somewhere such as Tampa Bay or New Orleans for a playoff game, I mean, we're really talking about, what, like the Eagles, because we've said the Eagles can go on that losing streak where they, lost to Seattle, lost to San Francisco. But if they now lose one of these last 3 games of the season, that's unacceptable. This is the time where they need to be righting the ship. And losing a game here is absolutely the last thing you can have.
Yep, can't afford it at all in any case, in any scenario. Just win. Just win.
Yeah. So we're on the same page here. You got to be rooting for the Cowboys, because as long as the Eagles take care of business and right their end of the ship, you want them to get the 2 seed. So
yes.
all right. I think we laid that out well there.
That's pretty good.
All right. Do you have anything else from this game? Otherwise, I think we can get into predictions.
Nah, let's do predictions, man.
All right. So let's hear your prediction for this game. Philadelphia, according to FanDuel right now, is an 11.5-point favorite against Arizona. So what's your prediction for the game?
See, I had 29-20, but I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna say 31-20 Eagles.
31-20 Eagles.
Yes.
We're kind of in the same line of thinking, man. I think that the Eagles are going to cover this spread. I think that they're going to win this game. This, to me, I feel like I just, talked about this at length. This is the game where they're going to have one of their best games of the season. Like, I've talked about it before. It's great they got back in the win column against the Giants, but this game and next week, this has got to be where they really put it all together before the playoffs if they're going to make a run at, getting back to the Super Bowl here. So I have them winning this one 35-14.
All right.
So a beatdown, man. I hope we're not putting a reverse jinx on, but we both have them winning big here. And you actually don't have them covering the spread. But again, it's that thing where they're going to convincingly win here. So I'm glad we again have some differentiation.
Yeah, I feel like we always do on these spreads. I'm also horrible at spreads, so
yeah. And I mean, I didn't even mention this before, but just to put it in context, we both had the Eagles winning last week, and we both had them not covering the spread, which was correct. So we were both in ideal lockstep with how that game was going to go. And then for the Steelers game, I had them winning and covering. You had them losing and obviously then not covering. But all good, man. So yeah, we do have some differentiation here. But let's get into the Steelers game now. They are plus 3.5-point underdogs in Seattle. Seattle on the 2-game winning streak. Look, man, I've said it. I'm going to ride with this team. They have to win this game. It's a defense that I believe they can, score points against. And, I'm hoping that Mason Rudolph can continue to kind of carry this magic and this defense can kind of continue. They were so good at getting pressure on Jake Browning last week that I hope that can continue to be the case. And I think Kenneth Walker is still questionable, but, if you kind of keep him hemmed in, I feel confident that the Steelers, I know the crowd's going to be tough up there in Seattle, but I'm confident they can get to the win. So I'm going to have them winning this game. I'm going to make it 18-16. They're going to narrowly get the win.
Ooh, 18-16. Okay. See, I'm at a crossroads here because initially I had the Seahawks winning by 4 and covering, but now I'm starting to think it's going to be the Steelers covering. I'm going to say, oh my God, 24-23. I'm going to reverse jinx. I'm going to try reverse jinx and say the Seahawks win, but I think the Steelers recover. I honestly, this could go either way, but who has the hotter hand right now? The Steelers. So Mason Rudolph has the hotter hand too. I mean, man, I don't know. I could see it going either way.
It's tough because the Seahawks have strung together 2 good wins in a row. I think they had to come from behind against Tennessee last week. So, yeah, man. I mean, maybe I have it. Maybe I just have this mindset in my head that because of how the Steelers have played really most of the season, I have the prediction for this game a little bit more low scoring than it's also going to be. I'm also a little bit skeptical, how many, I don't expect this team to put up 30 points back-to-back weeks. So I think where you have it, 24, that's kind of the high end of where I see the point scoring going, with the low end maybe being 14. So I feel like we're kind of in a good range of what the score could kind of be. And I hope your reverse jinx comes true here. So we will now have to wait and see how it all unfolds.
Oh boy. Big week, man. Big week.
Big week for both of these teams, honestly. And it always is when you get down to this time of the season. And interestingly enough, I don't know if you saw it, first time this century that every single game in week 17 of an NFL season features a team that still is in playoff contention. There's not a single game that has both teams eliminated. Granted, I guess that's really only relevant since the season's expanded to 17 games. Now that I say that out loud, because obviously in
Right.
week 17 there was always going to be teams eliminated.
Right. But I didn't
And
know
there was
that.
actually going to be Matt. I guess it still is somewhat, but now that I just said that, I guess
You just undermined yourself.
it doesn't sound as cool as the first time I read that.
No, it is pretty cool. It's just, yeah.
I mean, I guess that is pretty wild. Like, never in the modern era has there been a week 17 that has featured every game having a team that's still mathematically alive, but not as cool when you factor in the fact we've only had a handful of seasons where there's
That's all right. We'll throw that out the window.
Anyway, big week for the Steelers and Eagles. Big games when you slice it and dice it and dissect it the way that we have. So, any final thoughts, Ricardo?
Hey, let's hope our team get the wins again, and we have another good episode next week.
Man, it'd be something great to really start to carry some momentum as we head towards the playoffs here, and Eagles get ready for the playoffs, and Steelers hopefully find their way heading towards the 7th seed. But we will wait and see. All we can hope for and root for now is some victories, and that's what we will do. Until the next episode, everybody. Bye-bye. See you later.